Mm. Hi, Heidi. Good morning from me, and good earlier morning even to you. It's later in the day for most of my guests, but it's 6 a.m.
5:30.
Thank you for joining very early in your day for this one. I appreciate it.
That's so good. Coming from the future, I always love it. I'm like a day ahead, so it's cool. I'm more than happy to join the live stream and share my knowledge and everything with the community out there. And no, I am not where my background is, but that is in South Australia, so it's a pretty cool spot.
Yeah, you said it is near your parents' house.
Yes. Yeah. This is Port Victoria in South Australia. Awesome beaches, awesome fishing spot. Great place to just hang out. And there's about 2 hours from where I live in the CBD in Adelaide.
So it's excellent.
Super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a nice beach to go hang out at.
Yeah. Love it.
This is your second or third time doing a live stream with me.
Second.
Yeah, because we had one on Azure. I think Azure related, right?
We did sensitivity labels.
That's right. Yeah, sensitivity labels. Because I think that was around the time when they started having that propagation that could go all the way end to end, right? When they you could have something in Azure that could go from Azure to like the model in Power BI, which could go to the report, and it could push one setting all the way through the system if you set it up properly, if I recall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had it in the Office 365 world for so long that they finally started to permeate it through the data platform and even to on-prem SQL Server. It can support sensitivity labels as well. So it's kind of cool. Organizations have been doing data classification for forever and a day, but to have the tooling support it now is great. It's still got a little ways to go on the Power BI and Fabric side, but something's better than nothing for sure.
Well, I think a good place to get started here is give yourself a chance to introduce yourself a little bit, get people tuning in, watching later to get a chance to get to know you a little bit. And then from there, we can flip the magic wand, turn on the screen share whenever we're ready and go from there. So tell me a little bit about yourself for the people who don't know you yet.
Yeah, so for everybody who haven't met you, probably picked up on the accent. I'm Australian. I've grew up and lived in Australia my whole life. I'm a data platform professional. So at the moment I do data analytics consulting for a global organization, but I predominantly work with Australian clients. I also like to present and talk all things Microsoft and all things data because my former life was a software developer. So I used to use things like Visual Studio and cut code with like C# and then went into open source, doing like Perl programming and working with databases on that side of the fence, and then shifted back into the Microsoft world, was still cutting code, and then learned about the whole data field, joined the SQL Server community, started doing SQL Server. And God, it feels like forever. Like I think I finished uni like 20 years ago. So I've been doing IT for quite a while, which is quite scary. And more recently doing things like Microsoft Fabric and presenting on the different things in that space. I also volunteer a lot, both from technical and non-technical. I mean, I love going to my local farmers market on the weekend and helping out the farming community because that was my grassroots growing up. And then with the technical space, I volunteer with a lot of the events globally. So I like to do like the registration desk and talk to people and meet them. I got the chance just recently. I finished work and went into the Copilot user group locally in Adelaide, and I was able to talk to the people there about all things Power BI because they didn't realize we had a Power BI user group. And so I was talking to them about Power BI, what the industry's like for that space, where the jobs are, all the different changes that are happening at the moment. We've gone from one style of doing something to now all the way through to like chatting with that data, podcast with that data, using AI. But then people have to remember AI can't be used in every industry. So there's still the opportunity to do jobs with or without AI, which is kind of cool. But
I know one of the clients that I quite a few clients that I have for either for security or even ethical reasons. Like one is I'll just say it's an agency, down in LA that deals with artists, and the artists make content, and a lot of that even Copilot was technically trained off of questionable sources of acquisition. So they have an ethical thing with their clients. We're like, we don't, even though we can use it, we won't, just because it is taking information from clients that we represent. So we have to, like, they have their own internally trained models, but they were ethically built off of only their internal data.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, some people rely on it so heavily, and then other people like don't touch it at all. But I remember when it sort of first started to come into the data space, and part of me was like, love it. The security side of me is going, oh, turn it off, because we need a moment to just like take stock. And then I was also thinking, as a person who's sat in data teams before and seen the ticket queue of demand of what people want, or the issues or the backlog, and you just think the ability for a business user to use AI to get to a problem so much faster is going to mean way more tickets for those data teams. And so it's making sure that the team can support that, making sure they're scaled as well. And I think people forget that sometimes, as they turn on features and functionality and forget that someone's going to be there to support. And the wider user base you have, the sort of more support you need, but also the more tooling you use, the more support you need. So Copilot just means make sure your teams are set to scale for that demand that's going to happen, because things are going to happen so much faster, potentially. Imagine someone asking a question going, hey, what's the latest finance figures? And Copilot doesn't necessarily take into account all your business demands and requirements. And so if it gets the wrong figure, and then you have a person logging a question to the data team going, hey, why did I get this figure? And it's like, then they've got to figure that out and come back to you and go, actually, it's because we apply all these filters that Copilot wouldn't have known about. But that takes time.
Yeah, exactly. And just like as one like minor digression on this before we get into exams, like, what's your thoughts on the the whole discourse around like the GPT-5 rolling out? There's been a lot of very interesting, I think, both ends of the spectrum on loving it and hating it as people have been testing it. But it's always interesting each time a new model comes out, because there's a lot of just chatter around the internet on what it does, can't do, or stuff like that. I'm just curious if you had any like brief thoughts.
Like anything, I would love seeing the chatter where, especially with things like ChatGPT, they're like, oh, we can use ChatGPT, and then someone will be like, oh no, it's not available in AI Foundry yet, or oh no, it's not available in this extension yet. Oh, you can use it in this one, not this one. Oh, you've got to turn this feature on. It's like, oh man, like all the different like configurations you've got to do just to get there. I mean, I love them either way, but I've got a mindset of use it where it's appropriate and where I can, and where for me, it's predominantly in productivity improvement or procrastination barriers. If I'm doing some learning, sometimes I'll use one of those tools to just be like, oh, look, quick, let's just get started with something. But generally speaking, I always think of NCIS and Gibbs, trust but verify. Trust but verify. You can't 100% rely on any of it. So it's like, you've got to know a little bit about your domain area to be able to go, is this thing like completely hallucinating? Is it on the right point? Is it putting me down a rabbit hole? But I think the other issue we have now is like we saw in software development world. I remember things like Python, the package versions, you would build something with a specific package version, and then you've got to consciously decide, am I going to upgrade? Am I going to auto upgrade that package? Do I want to specifically get a specific version? ChatGPT is now going to have the same problem, because people are going to go, oh, I'm using ChatGPT 5. And then what happens when 6 comes out, or 7, or whatever the next versions are? And then you've got to go, well, are we going with the latest major version? Is there the concept of minor versions? What's the impact assessment for an upgrade? Like, it just introduces all these things that we've seen in software development world that maybe they haven't considered for the AI space. Like, how are we going to manage the upgrade path for the different models? And because you're going to get different answers potentially.
Well, I think the issue, just the last comment, because I have found it interesting the amount of people who have like lamented over like losing a friend because they deleted all the old models and then they brought them back. But I think the thing that's very dangerous on what they do is it's not just releasing a new model, but they just, without like saying anything, like, oh, we're going to delete all the old ones. Like, no, I had a whole process built out with a specifically trained model on that I know works. Now I have to do this again. So it would be like offering an upgrade for Adobe But then immediately like, no, you can't use any previous version. You have to upgrade and use this. We're going to force you to install the new version. I think that's the risky part of it, and why I think it's still hard to integrate that into new platforms or SaaS products unless you allow for the legacy. My only opinion is, I'll just keep it short and simple, is just the fact that it seems to me now, having at least kind of scanned the internet on it, they released something that they said was the greatest thing since sliced bread, as they always do. It seems like 100% it was a cost-cutting thing. This model clearly is designed to just save them a ton of money, because all the companies right now are hemorrhaging money. Anthropic, well, outside of Google, because they have enough of a pocket to afford it. But Anthropic and OpenAI are both hemorrhaging money on licensing, on how many people are using it. So I think they're really trying to figure out how to not burn through billions of dollars in cash and start to actually make a revenue stream off of these things.
It would be a great, like in the future, a documentary of like behind the scenes, what was happening in the offices as this thing was getting rolled out. Like, hey, what licensing model do we put? Oh my God, look at all the people using it. Like,
so funny enough, and the last one I swear, I just saw stills of Andrew Garfield, who is going to be playing Sam Altman in an upcoming movie. I don't know why they're making one so soon. Apparently the focus of the movie is when he got fired and rehired, when he got kicked out as CEO. But there is first footage stills of on set of him playing Sam Altman about OpenAI. So they're already making a dramatic documentary on the company. I feel like they're 3 to 5 years too soon for this, because you don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the story of like this stuff or AGI. But yeah, they're already in the works on that, apparently, to try to like sell movie tickets.
Wow, they're probably trying to get ahead of like a deep fake version.
Exactly. But circling the conversation to the topic of the day, exams, the exam ecosystem. Also, there's been a lot of things changing with exams. We've lost a few, but where would you like to start on pivoting the conversation into talking about today's topic?
Yes, let's talk about the options for what exams data pros can take, right? So
yep,
a lot of people don't realize that let's start. For why do we do exams? Exams test your knowledge. They give you a way to differentiate yourself, because it is a certification that's industry recognized and it's provided by Microsoft. So we can go, hey, I've got a Microsoft certification, which means Microsoft has assessed your technical ability to a point. Now, that point is never, even though they have exams at an expert level, I wouldn't call it a, expert specifically in industry, nor would it be, it's not the unicorn, the people who do multiple roles. I reckon it was about probably 5 years ago now, Microsoft switched their exam strategy in the data space, at least, to be role-based. So before that, it was product-based. We had exams for like SQL Server. We have exams for things like Office, whereas now we have it role-based. So for data and AI specifically, with the exams, we've got the ability to do a fundamentals, which is like an intro exam. I'm never going to say an exam is easy or hard, because that's relative to the individual and their experience and their knowledge. But that's that intro level exam. And then we shift into more of the specialist style exams, where it's like, hey, you can do an exam in AI at a more deeper level of knowledge. You can do an exam for data science. You can do an exam for database administration. The tricky part we have with those, with data platform for Microsoft, we can be doing SQL Server on-prem. We could be doing SQL Server IaaS, Azure SQL, Azure Data Factory things. We could be doing, storage accounts only. We could be doing Synapse and external tables. We could be doing Azure Databricks. We could be doing Fabric. But all of those kind of, that when they say database administration, it kind of goes across all the database ones, with the exception of Fabric SQL, because that's in preview. So you might be someone who works solely with SQL Server on-prem, and you try and do a database exam, and it's going to cover content from Azure SQL that you might not know. So it's role-based, but at the same time, that can be challenging for professionals in the data field who only do one of the products that a role might do. So you then have to stretch your knowledge a little bit. Or something like AI engineering, even though on the Microsoft platform side, you've got AI Foundry, OpenAI, Copilot Studio, and the various other spaces where you can do AI. that exam is going to go across, but not necessarily all of those, because something like Copilot Studio fits more in the Power Platform exam space. And I don't even think it's got its own exam. So it becomes a little bit of a question of where you go with your exam strategy. I would always look to do the fundamentals as a minimum. So there's 2 fundamentals for data and AI. There's one for just AI fundamentals, and there's one for data fundamentals. And you could consider, if you're working in cloud world, could consider also doing the Azure fundamentals. And then with those 3, it gives you at least a grounding. So that's these ones here, the fundamentals track. And I would say for some data pros, if you're going to be working with citizen devs, you're going to want to go over and do Power Platform fundamentals as well, because that's covering things like Power Apps, Power Automate, a little bit of, I think, on the Copilot Studio side, because it used to be Power Virtual Agents. But that's that side of the fence. But if we come back to the data one and we want to go a bit deeper, then we can look to do exams for engineering or for things like data science or AI. Now, if I was a data engineer today focusing solely on Fabric, you might not necessarily touch the Azure ones at all and just go straight for the 2 Fabric ones, the analytics engineer and the data engineer. If I was someone on the Azure world, I would probably do most of the Azure ones. So whether it's the fundamentals for both Azure and Azure Data, and then also database administrator. Data science is probably more if you're going to sit in the machine learning space than anything else. And then if you're doing IaaS work, you'll also go into the Azure space and do something like AZ 104 with the Azure administrator, or the solution architect expert one as well, AZ 305. And for people who work for Microsoft partner organizations, the partners, one of their qualifications to be a partner is around certifications of their staff. And so sometimes for data partners, they not only have to do data and AI track, but also infrastructure track as well. And then if you want to get things like app specialist partnerships, you've got to go into the app dev digital space. So for me personally, I used to hate exams, used to hate them. Now I have 13 of them, which seems kind of weird. And I probably got most of those in like a 2-year period. I went on a bit of a gamification process.
Okay.
So the way you do it is like I would sit the learn modules and then go do the fundamentals exams, because an exam is, like I said, it's not going to be expert, but it's not going to be newbie either. So you want to do things like do the learn modules, look through the study guides, look through the assessments, and then play with the products, get some industry experience, probably like 1 to 2 years industry experience, and then look to sit the exam. But in saying that, the exams change so frequently throughout the year, or at least, get reviewed during the year. So the longer you wait to sit an exam, the more opportunity the product that is included in that exam is going to develop. The exam content is going to develop, and you're just going to be constantly learning. So sometimes what I say to people now is, instead of learning and studying to the nth degree, get to a level where you're comfortable to at least try the exam, and then try it. And that way you know how far off you are from the current exam level set, to be like, hey, because as long as you get 70% or above, you've passed it. And if you don't pass it, you get a bit of a breakdown that says, hey, of the major, section heading topics, this is how you went roughly through them. And we'll never tell you which questions you got right or wrong, but you can see where your strengths are. Like, okay, I did really well in, database administration, user management, but not so good in backup and recovery stuff. So that's something to be conscious of. But we do have a lot of exams. And if you are a data pro, great to do them, because it puts you apart from someone else. So if you're applying for a job and you've got a certain, they don't, it's a differentiator.
I mean, it provides you in, somewhat of an instant credibility badge to a degree.
Exactly. And, it's kind of fun. I sit them at home. Like, I've sat an exam at like 4 a.m. before. Just set my little fold-up table in front of my couch, put my laptop on it, sit the exam, because you can do them at a testing center, where the testing center is responsible for like the environment, the computer, the network, all that stuff, and you just rock up and sit the exam. Or you can do them virtually, online proctored. So you join the exam platform, you have a proctor watching your webcam the whole time. It's all delivered on your laptop. You go through and do the questions. It's the same platform either way. And then at the end of it, you hit the I'm finished button. It assesses you, and you know straight away whether you passed or failed. So it's like 2 hours of stress, and then immediate like understanding of how did I go. But this is the starting point for data flows is have a look at this list and go, yeah, which ones do I want to do? If you're going to be working in Power Platform, it's the same. It's got fundamentals. It's also got specialty ones as well on this far right hand side, so you can be a specialist. The downside for data pros, if you're a Power BI person, there's really only one exam, and it's an associate level one. There's no expert level in the data side, which is a little bit frustrating. So you only get one certification. You can stretch into the Fabric Analytics Engineer because it's the closest. If you're working in the modeling space of Power BI, you can consider doing that one. But it's a bit unfortunate that you don't have like an entry and then like an intermediate and then an advanced. You've just got the one, and that's it. But then there's other ways to demonstrate.
The cornerstone ones, considering the level of these, if you have any that are recommended.
Azure Data Fundamentals, minimum for any data pro. If I'm working in Fabric, I would go, I like data engineering more than anything else, so I would go the data engineer one. But if I'm not working in Fabric, then database administrator. I don't do a lot of AI work directly. I probably wouldn't say you need the AI exams to do AI work, or that it's going to differentiate you, because I think for AI, it's more going to be your understanding at a different level than these exams will test. And same for data science. Like you could have I have the data science certification, but it's not like I sit there and go do machine learning models and write complex R algorithms and stuff like that. So I think if you want to do them, great. But I think for most people, it's going to be fundamentals and the Fabric ones.
Okay, that's good to know then. And like out of curiosity, like, I mean, you've been involved in some of the exam proctoring, similar to me, but I will say that part of the goal of being a SME, subject matter expert, is, kind of helping to figure out what is on there. And I will say that like the exam questions are written well, but I would imagine you agree that like over the years, we've definitely had exams that have questions that are like, why? So this is the role you're building this exam for. Why do you think this material would be typically known by this type of a role with some of those, where it's like, you have to study for things that are going to be on the exam, but aren't, I think like the Azure Data Engineer, DP, is that DP 600?
Azure Data was DP 203, but it just went like deprecated.
Yeah, I think it was one of those from like 3 or 4 years ago. But I just remember there was a bunch of questions with like certain coding languages where it's just like you could, because there's a lot of jobs where it's like you need to know how to read it, but this was like no, you need to know how to really write this code. Like, and I just remember the questions around me is like, what person in this role would ever like normally need to know these things? But like that is one of the gotchas that I feel like sometimes is like maybe one of the reasons that people don't always love exams is like, it is fun to be able to take an exam to test knowledge that you have. But when you have to learn knowledge occasionally, that is outside of the box of what you would typically need to know outside of literally just the written test, it can be a little frustrating sometimes, I'd say, to speak candidly on exams occasionally.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the gotchas that people don't notice is when you're reading like the study guides and stuff. So I'm like, I think I've got one here. When you're going through and reading like the sections that an exam is going to be assessed on, it's like all the different sections. So this is like DP 700. And in DP 700, if I open like the study guide and you see the different sections, a lot of data engineers are only going to look at it and go, well, I do like SQL or I do Python. But then they don't realize that, hey, this exam is going to cover real time as well. So if you're just doing like batch or micro batch engineering work and you've never done real time work, you've probably never written KQL unless you were using Azure Data Explorer over on the Azure platform for like log analytics or security monitoring or something. So they're like, well, I don't know KQL at all. And that's a whole nother language to learn. It's a bit like people doing Power BI. It's like, you might know DAX and not M, but now you've got to know like DAX and M and the different like extensions and options that you have. And now with this one, it's similar. It's like, well, Fabric has the ability to do SQL, it has the ability to do Python, has the ability to do KQL. And you might interchange those, but you probably have foundational skills in one of them over the others. And you may or may not have never touched the others. But with the exam, you don't get to pick what language you're tested on.
Yeah,
You'll
true.
just get questions on any of them. But in saying that, the cool thing is with the exam now, so we'll jump ahead a little bit and I'll talk to you about this, is the exam platform. So this is an example of an exam question. This is not a live question. This is just a screen grab from one of the sandboxes. But this here is what an exam question looks like. Now, I reckon it was March last year or March last year, I think. They introduced the ability for people to open up Learn. Now, you can't use Copilot, you can't use searches, but you can go and navigate through the Learn modules and try and understand the question better. So sometimes when you're not,
yeah.
So if you're not 100% clear, you can go, well, let me crack open the Learn module and try and find more information on this. So it's effectively an open book exam now. Downside of that, don't rely on it, because you're going to spend time having to navigate the Learn modules. So unless you know them fairly well, don't rely on doing this for every single question. I mean, you can see here this timer for exams. You probably get about 180 minutes to do them, about 60 questions. And so you don't want to be sitting there researching on Learn for very long, because you'll just run out of time. You'll burn through that time. You'll not get through all the questions. So, but it is open book now. So you get that opportunity to use the Learn module instead, which blessing and a curse at the same time, I think. But it does help.
I mean, I'm assuming you have to search manually. You just can't have ChatGPT open. We're like, what's the answer to this question? Because GPT can plug in to Learn. Go ahead.
Yeah, apparently early they had some flaws. Like the practice test was still accessible because they're now based on the Learn platform. But they quickly, I think, fixed that problem and made it a bit more locked down. But I think it's cool because you could be like solid on, say, 90% of the exam and just really unsure on the 10%. So the fact that you can go, hey, let me crack open Learn and try and get those 10% at the end, great. Or you might be on the cusp of like passing, and it could be that one question that you just need to look up a bit further, and the Learn module helps you get there. So I'm like, anything that can help, but definitely don't rely on it 100% because you'll run out of time. I think the statistics that they do, because they analyze all the behavior patterns and everything behind the scenes on exams, so they've made adjustments over time, and I think they've probably figured out that anyone that relies solely on the Learn modules is just not going to pass all the time, because unless you can read super quick and navigate super quick, you can't in trouble. The other thing,
I think that's the people I think I've just found around closed versus open book is the one. Open book's a little easier to manage cheating, so to speak. All you really need to do is you just have to make sure that there are so many exam questions that you can't get through it unless you are actually the expert, right? But then you remove that like barrier of not allowing, a lookup or things along that nature, because it still, in a way, I guess, tests for that. Either that or somebody is insanely fast at being able to actually look up stuff. But I personally prefer open book policies, because there's sometimes where the concept, but it's like, well, hold on, was it like that mean you were this? And what was the word? Because like you conceptually know it, but there's like two questions that are so similar that you just want to double check something. And I think everybody can agree it's really frustrating when you knew the answer, but a phrase or something was not done in a way that wouldn't have merited from like a 5-second lookup just to confirm something for you or something like that.
Yeah, I always find trying to remember like the modules for either the REST APIs or PowerShell commandlets. It's just like, oh, it's structured. I know it's structured this way, but I'm so used to the IntelliSense telling me. And this is the other thing to point out while we're on this screen is this review later option. So you can go through the exam and just hit review later. And then when you get to the end, you've got the option to filter all the questions to just the ones you tag for review.
Yeah.
So you can just I try and almost muscle memory go through the exam and just answer questions off the top of my head as reasonably quick as possible, but not too quick that I'm not reading the question in enough depth. And then I just go back and do the review ones and spend more time on those. But then I've at least got through all the questions, because there's no harm in answering a question wrong. You don't lose points. You just don't get any points. So it's important to answer as many questions as you can so that you've got the best chance of getting the points. And some of the questions are worth more than 1 point. So like when you look at this one, this is just a multiple choice, single answer question. But there's all these different question types. So this is a multiple choice with one answer. There's multiple choice with multiple answers. There's what they call a build list, where it's like, hey, put together the sequence of activities that occur to achieve this outcome. And you'll get given like the list of both correct and incorrect information to then puzzle piece it together. You got things like an active screen where you've got to identify from a screenshot, like what is the point position in the screen that is the answer to that question. You've got the drag and drop ones where you might, or even drop down lists where there might be a command where they've done 3/4 of the command and left for a drop down where you've got to fill in the blank. And that can either be a drop down or it can be a drag and drop. And the thing to remember is sometimes the questions are similar in context because they're testing a specific area. So you could get to a question and you're like, oh, I'm not sure on that. Let me mark it for review, and get like 5 questions later and go, oh, given the way that question's structured, that gives me a hint on the answer for that previous question. Let me go back and answer that one, because sometimes they have content that helps you with other questions. It's rare, but it's possible. And then there's the case study. And the case study is like reading an essay and then having like 5 questions on it. But what I found now, my strategy for those is I don't actually read the case study in full because that takes time. I read the question and then I target read the sections of the case study, because the case study is broken down into sections. And with the newer platform, the other thing they introduced is the ability to take a break. So if you're mid-exam and you just need to take like a breather, like do a restroom break, grab some water, whatever the case may be. The downside, you can't review any question you answered prior to that break time.
Okay.
So it's there, but it has its downfall that you can't review. And case studies are the same, right? So you take a case study question. Once you say, I'm finished with the case study, you can't go back and review it. So there's 5 questions you can't go back and review. So it's like, you got to be conscious of like the time, conscious of like the options. If you're someone who visual time cues stress you out, you can now hide the timer. So you don't have to have that as a visual constant reminder. If it's something that's going to cause you like anxiety and stress, you can hide it. Doesn't mean you can't see it. You can just hide it generally and then bring it back. There's like a railway track little menu that allows you to see where you are through the exam. Like, oh, you're question 5 and you've still got, 40 odd to go. There's all those sorts of things. You can't pick your language. So if you're doing a fabric exam, you could get it tested on all different stuff. What else is there that we can do? Oh, you can do like a sketchpad whiteboard thing. So if you like someone who likes to write notes on the digital platform, they have a little whiteboard. So you can use your mouse and do that.
I remember the last time, I like that they opened this up. I'll admit it's been a couple of years since I've taken my last one, partially because I've proctored enough that you get you're auto certified because you literally you created the entire exam, which is a nice benefit. But I just remember at one point years ago taking like the PL 100. It was super old. I think it was data analyst in Power BI. But I talk a bit under my breath. So like sometimes it helps me to like hear.
Yeah.
So like I'll be like, so the question, like I'll just be quietly reading that because it does help to commit to memory. Like, hey, no talking.
Yeah.
Like what? I was like, the only thing I can think of is it's not because you're cheating. It might be that you're trying to record the exam questions to maybe go share it with somebody else. But I just remember that like, this is so restrictive. But I was a little grumpy. It's like, I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah, it's like you cannot, especially when you're doing the online proctor one where you're sitting at your home or your office or a meeting room, wherever the case may be, they're watching that webcam. And if it looks like you're talking, even if there's no audio, they'll jump on and be like, hey, warning, don't do that again. We'll have to boot you out. You can't have anything near you, so don't use necessarily your home office space because you can't have multiple monitors. You get like one screen and that's it. They'll even question what cables are around the device, hence why I do a portable table and just put my laptop on it. make sure you've got a backup internet, make sure you've got a backup webcam, because if the webcam fails for any reason, you can't like start the exam. Give yourself plenty of time to like I think the last time I sat a full exam, the pre-check took like 6 minutes to analyze like the software and stuff running on my laptop to make sure that it could load the exam platform. And then when it went to load the exam, the proctor was like, hey, your exam's there, you're good to go. And I was looking at a blank screen. All I could see was the proctor, like as in the little message to say there's a proctor, my webcam, a whiteboard button, and a chat button, and that's it. The rest was like blank. And I was like panicking, and I'm like, the exam is not here. And I'm like, hey, exam person, I see nothing.
Yeah.
And we got to the point where they got a technical engineer on the call, and we were almost going to reboot my machine. We're at the point of reboot, and then it finally loaded, and I was like, oh, thank goodness for that. So allow yourself plenty of time. And that's why some people actually go to the testing centers, because then the testing center is responsible for all of it. So you don't got to worry about if the internet's going to drop out.
I had to put a bed sheet over my TV. I had to take my cell phone and put it across there was a lot of room set up. I remember having to do for mine. Like they had to like watch me unplug like some devices and stuff like that. I had to take my laptop and walk around the room and like show everything. I mean, it's good because, there are cheaters, but I remember just so many hoops to jump through to do that.
And I always, like, without fail now, every time I do an exam, automatically hit the chat with the proctor person. And I'm like, hello, I live in a set of units. This wall behind me is the entrance to those units. So you will hear people through this wall as they are coming into their visiting friends, or they're getting home or whatever. I'm like, they are not physically in my unit, nor can I talk to them. But I'm just warning you that if you hear people, it's because it's the neighbors, not me.
Yep.
But you're right. There are a lot of hoops, and it can go wrong. I've heard of people where they've got all the way into the exam and it's just crashed. If you don't get in on time for your slot, that's it. You've paid for it and you don't get to sit it. So there's all sorts of things to do there. There's some things where if it's like circumstances out of your control, they might have an option. Also, if you've got any accessibility requirements, like if you need screen readers or anything like that, Microsoft has accessibility solutions to try and help for the different needs that people might have. So always check those out, because if you need something that you want to make sure you've got the option to use it, or at least talk to the exam proctors and be like, hey, what are the options here? But it's crazy. And then the exams change all the time. Oh, don't stress when you do the exam. Like, you got to stress anyway if you're a stressed person, but you just breathe through it. Like, find techniques that work for you, whether it's the, what is it? Count to 4, breathe in, count to 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, before you actually sit the exam, just do the whole, like, decompress, life's great, relax, and then get yourself ready to go sit the exam. And don't worry if you fail. Like, there was one exam, I actually read the terms and conditions because I had failed it twice and I needed to pass it. And I was like, what did the rules? And it's like, okay, you can sit the exam and then 24 hours later you can pay for it and sit it again. And if you fail, then you've got to wait 2 weeks between each subsequent attempt. And it was like up to 5 attempts in a year. And I'd failed twice and I wanted to pass by a certain date. So I had like planned it out, going, okay, study to here, try it here, study to here, try it here. And I'd pre-worked out my slots. Even when I'm going to register for an exam, I pre-work out what's my backup date. So if I'm going to sit it this weekend, what's my backup? I'm going to sit it next weekend or 2 weeks' time, so that I'm mentally prepared for if something goes wrong. It's like, no worries. I've already scheduled in my day. It's going to be here. There's one exam where I was like, never again. If I didn't pass it, I did not want to sit it again. I just did not like the style of questions. I think it was one of the Power Platform ones. I was like, no, I don't need that one. No. And the cool thing, once you get an exam, so fundamentals exams don't expire. Great. So once you have them until Microsoft changes them up and gets rid of them or merges them or splits it into different exams. associate exams you've got to renew, but the renewal is not the full exam. The renewal is like a 25 question multiple choice online that you can do whenever. Like I've been sitting on a train and I'll just get out my phone and hit the renew button, and it's like a 40-minute journey, so there's enough time. And I just go through and have a go at the renewal exam, because the renewal opens up 6 months before your exam expires. So you got oodles of time to go through that renewal process. You get reminders sent to you by email, you go in and you do the renewal, and it extends it for another year. The thing to watch for, the more exams you have, the more renewals you have to do. Try to space them out a little bit. Otherwise, you'll be trying to upskill on the newer content, because a renewal exam can have the newer content in it. So you'll be you might have sat the exam like 2 years ago, and now you're getting tested on stuff that is in the product today. Preview features are not included in exams, but deprecated stuff can be. So that's something to be conscious of, especially with the latter round of products coming out in the data space. There are a lot of preview things. So it's like, hey, you're not going to get tested on a preview thing, but be mindful that the more features going in, the more things that might hit you in the exam. But what else is there? Yeah, you can review. You can provide feedback too. So if the question you felt had issues or was incorrect, or you're questioning the content, you can mark it for feedback, and you can leave feedback. Don't tell them like, oh, the platform's crap, because that's not related to the actual exam itself.
It's question feedback, not the
exactly, because someone's got to review that feedback and then work out, are they going to make changes to the exam? But ultimately, you just give these exams a go. Like, I'm excited for having the exams, and I'm pleased that Fabric has 2, because you look and go, Azure Data only had, I think, 2 as well. It had about 4, and then they culled 2 of them into DP203, and now 203's disappeared, and you've only got Azure Database Administrator. But for a data pro, unless you're doing infrastructure, then of course you can do infrastructure. I've done the DevOps one as well, because we're doing a lot of DevOps CI/CD as data engineers. So you can do that one as a bit of a tangent skill. It's very different though, because it's more app dev focused DevOps than it is like data engineering focused DevOps. So you got to be mindful it's a DevOps role exam, so it's broad, and it'll test you on the various, because you've got GitHub and you've got Azure DevOps, but it's going to be more on the Azure DevOps side than it is GitHub, because GitHub has its own certification track. So if you are looking to do more, say, Python development, maybe consider doing some of the GitHub exams as well, because those can be a tangential one for you and help with career prospects, I think. But definitely give them a go. Like I said, I used to hate them, and now I'm just like, ooh, exam. Let's just like do the learn modules, study. Oh, and I didn't touch on the study stuff. So some other things you might want to know is do the learn modules. There are things like study guides. The study guides will tell you the breakdown of the exam. So there's usually major headings. So it might say for Power BI, there's like get data, and that's going to be 25 to 30% of the exam. Straight away, that'll tell you that you're going to get more questions on that than you are on a section that's a lower percentage. And then it'll give you subtopics in those sections. So it might say, oh, for get data, it's going to be about, connectors, or it's going to be about, how you would connect to a specific data source, stuff like that. Or if it's transforming data, it's like, all right, what do you need to know? Like aggregates, group by, removing nulls, replacing values, stuff like that. Go through those. So that gives you an idea of what you're going to be tested on. Set up some trials, whether it's an Azure trial, a Fabric trial, a Power Platform, developer trial, set up a trial platform, because your work environment may or may not have these products, and it may or may not, you might not have access in your role. So it doesn't mean you can't try it, because there are trials for almost everything. Go in and try them. Go look at the community resources. So I've got some cool ones on these other tabs that if I just get out of this PowerPoint, figure out how to get out of the PowerPoint. There we go. So some of my favorites is Data Mozart, or Nikolai. Not only is he a prolific blogger, but he also does live streams for the exams, like studying for the exams and stuff. So check out his stuff, and he's got a book. So he's got my stuff for DP600 and for 700 if you're doing Fabric. If you're more in the Azure space, check out John Saville. His technical content is like second to none, And he also does these cool study cram sessions. So you can do a whole bunch of study and then join like a study cram stream that he does. And so you
That's
can
cool.
like get through all the different topics. And he's a really good like instructor of doing studying. Like you see in the background there, it's this virtual whiteboard, and he is able to talk to you about content, visually start drawing things out. Like he'll be like, this is Entra, and this is how it connects through to this, and now we're going to look at this, and then he'll switch and open up like learn modules and things. So it's quite an interactive without being interactive way of learning. You got people like Kevin Chant, who does a lot in the data engineering space with the Microsoft product tools. But then you've also got the Fabric Careers Hub. So the Fabric Careers Hub gives you links into different things. So Microsoft run live streams every so often through Reactor or through one of the other channels, going through the Learn modules for a specific exam. So they've just finished in the last couple of months doing PL 300 Power BI and DP6 and 700 for the Fabric exams. They've got study cram sessions. They do sessions where they say, hey, let's get some of the Microsoft MVPs or most valuable professionals, maybe some super users that work on the forums a lot, maybe even Microsoft staff themselves. And they'll do like a study session where you can join and ask questions, and basically like a full-on open Q&A. So this is like a great little portal to be able to go for the Fabric stuff, figure out, hey, how do I learn? Or join a study group, because not everyone learns the same. So if you're going to sit the exam, consider like, hey, is a study group something that's going to help me? And then you can go in and do the practice test, but do not rely on a practice test to indicate whether you're going to pass or fail. A lot of people try that. They're like, oh, I got like 100% on the practice test. I'm like, yeah. That practice test is a far less pool of questions. And the more you do it, the more you're just going to inherently remember the question and the answer. So you can do it as a way to get familiar with the question style and potentially the subject matter, but it's not going to give you any guaranteed you get 100% on that, you'll get, a pass mark on the exam. No, you'll get totally different questions. Totally.
So what's the
different,
link? What's the link to the study session that you were talking about?
Yeah, I found that before.
John Saville's?
These learning rooms. John Saville. He's
Saville.
great. Love his content.
This is YouTube, right? John Saville's technical training?
Yeah. Chuck that in there. I do the careers hub, which is actually like aka.ms/fabric career hub is the one. And then within that, these learning room ones are basically where you can join a shared group conversation. The other thing is just reach out to the community. I mean, we love helping people out. So it's just reach out to a bunch of us and be like, hey, can you jump on a study session? And there's a good chance one of us will probably say yes, if not more of us. And then if you're like me and your barrier to doing an exam is also the cost, because these cost money, right? Is have a look for anytime Microsoft runs like a voucher program. So they do like a live learn series, which is where they have presenters talk through the learn module content. They deliver it on YouTube via Reactor, the Reactor channel. But usually in those is a QR code for a discount when there's a big event on. So Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft Build, Power Platform Conference, those sorts of big Microsoft events, they will run what they call a Cloud Skills Challenge. But when you look at that, like they may or may not run it, right? They've run it in the past, so I'm going off past patterns. The Cloud Skills Challenge is where they say, hey, pick a path, a learning path, whether you want to do data scientist, AI, data engineer, administrator, pick a path that ties to an exam and go complete the learn modules in a 30-day period. So you say, yep, sign me up for the challenge. This is the pathway I want to do. I want to do data science. Go do all the learn modules in a 30-day period. Next thing you know in your inbox is a voucher for the exam. And it can be anywhere between 50%, 80%, 100% off. If they release a new exam and it's in beta, often the blog post that announced the exam includes a discount code for the beta one. The downside of a beta exam is you have no idea whether you passed or failed until it gets to GA. So you'll sit it and maybe like a month or two later, you will find out whether you passed or failed. And they've
Long way.
also yeah, oh, it's crazy. It's the stress too, because that instant gratification or the instant knowing you failed is kind of better than the stress of, oh no, I gotta wait until it's GA. And 30 Days to Learn It was another program they did. I can't remember if that one's still going, but there's always ways to get vouchers. If you're working for an enterprise customer for Microsoft, so if you're like a partner program, whatever, or you have enterprise agreements, check if you've got one called the Enterprise Skills Initiative, because that often gives companies free certification vouchers. So you can use those programs to get vouchers through your employer, and they go sit the exams, because these are like $100+ USD dollars. And when you think about one or two, that's
not cheap to take.
But 6+, you're spending a bit of coin. I mean, they're great for your career. You don't have to do them. If exams aren't your thing, don't do them. But if you are going to do them, maybe look for the vouchers. I know I did.
True.
Saved a lot of money. Or see if your employer incentivizes it. Some employers, because they need some of these certs for their partner program, sometimes they'll do things internally as a reward for employees who get certified. Sometimes it's a KPI for job roles. It's like, hey, as part of your role, we need you to do 1 certification a year. So that's something to consider too as you're looking at the exams, going, well, which one do I want to do? And the order of them with the Azure data ones, or just data in general, there's no real set order that you have to do. Like, do the fundamentals, but you don't have to do AI fundamentals to go do like the Cosmos speciality exam. Like, there's no hard and fast rule. There's just recommendations. Like, we suggest you do the fundamentals before you do the associate. But the order of associate, like, you can do the Fabric data engineer and not do the analytics engineer. You can do the Azure database administrator and not do the Fabric ones. Like, there's no pathway set there between them, which is why you don't see any lines with that certification poster. There's no lines here to indicate you've got to do this one before this one before this one. It's not mandatory. What I would say is some of the exams overlap in or are very close. Like AZ 104 to 305, if you're an Azure infrastructure person, those are very similar exams. So you want to do them reasonably close together. The 2 Fabric ones, because Fabric data engineers and analytic engineers are very similar in what they do as a role. They just specialize in different sections. So the overarching content is going to be similar, not one for one the same, but similar. So you may want to do those 2 exams reasonably close, so then you're not having to relearn everything over and over.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping things fresh in your brain.
Yeah. But I know I only learned that after I did them.
Lessons from in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And
I don't know if there's any more coming out either. I'm sure there will be more exams over time, but
most of the core content isn't changing that much. It's like where the tools are located changes, but like, for the most part, nothing's really that new in Fabric that wasn't already there in Azure. It's just in a new platform.
Yeah, exactly. And the techniques are slightly different. Like when you get questions around monitoring in Fabric versus monitoring in like Azure Data Factory and Azure Synapse, they're going to be a little bit different. So it's having that awareness of the product itself. That's where the trying the product out kind of helps, because if you've actually gone in and had a bit of a play, even if it's an area you don't work in day out, you've at least got that. Oh, I remember seeing this in the portal or the service, or I remember seeing these sorts of settings. You try out the different things, and there's so much content out there about people saying like how you can study for the exam, how to take the exam, what to do in the exam. But I think ultimately it comes down to like your knowledge, because once you do 1 or 2 exams, you get a flavor for how the exams are written, the way they're structured, the style. Then it just comes down to your knowledge in that subject area.
I would agree on that. I'm trying to think. So as we're getting closer to the end here, we've dropped a couple links in the chat. Are there any others that you would want people to be able to reference as well, just to make sure I haven't missed anything on follow-ups for either finding study groups, online things for YouTube, or anything else that would be good resources for them?
this one. So Microsoft have this events platform, which if you've never seen this before, this allows you to search for stuff. And I've pre-searched for in a day. And the reason for that is for anyone beginning in the space or in a specific area, there's what they call the in a day. So they do for data pros, it's like data dashboard in a day. There's fabric analyst in a day. There's real-time intelligence in a day. There used to be DAX in a day and administrator in a day. Those aren't there anymore. But these in a days are usually free, basically workshop lab content. So Microsoft allows partners and them themselves, they put on these in a day events. They can be virtual or in person, and they'll go through. So you'll learn about the products as well as do labs. So you get hands-on experience in the labs. So these are really cool if you want to just get started. Like I saw recently, there's now like Copilot Studio in a day. I think there's even like automation in a day, which I'm keen to like have a look at. But you can see here, like, and these are global. So we've got stuff from all over the world, New Zealand, New York, Kuwait, United States, fabric analyst in a day. So you just register for these. They're usually free. You can register for them, join in online, and the one that's appropriate for your time zone, use the searches to do that. I know later today, I'm doing a real-time intelligence train the trainer workshop to learn about how to run real-time intelligence in a day. But these are a nice way to get started and just get that from no knowledge to something with a guided path so that you're not, just flailing out there trying to learn and read all the modules. You're actually sitting down and going, okay, I'm going to learn about something. Then I'm going to do a lab in that area. And then I'm going to learn about some more. I'm going to do a lab in that area. And you've got someone there teaching the lab and usually a moderator to help. So you can ask questions and go, hey, I can't get this working. What have I done wrong? What am I missing? Or I don't quite understand this. Can you clarify the content a bit better? So these events are really cool to be able to just get up to speed, especially if you're someone who learns by like watching others do it and then doing hands-on, as opposed to just like watching a stream or reading the modules themselves. Oh, and do the sandbox.
Sorry, can you grab me that link, please? And then I'll make sure to share it in the chat.
I'll drop it in. Behind the scenes.
Yes.
Chat. And then I didn't point this out.
There it is. For some reason,
when each exam has its own page, and on the page, we'll get this scroll right. Oh, there it is. Sandbox. You can do the sandbox. Now, what is the sandbox? It's just going to launch the actual exam platform with a fake question. So just so you can see the experience. So you can see the fact that it's going to load up an application. It's going to give you the whole, you're about to take an exam. Do you agree to the terms and conditions? Next. Now this is the exam you're going to take and this is what it looks like. Next. And then it'll load up a question. So you get that precursor to understand exactly what that exam environment looks like hands-on. It's not like legitimate questions or anything. It's more just to get you familiar with the actual exam interface itself. And then the same with these practice tests. So you can find the sandbox, the practice test, the study guide, all on the exam page for that exam. So as you're looking at it, it'll be like, this is the data engineering exam. This is the overall objective of the exam. These are the targeted learn modules that they suggest you do. They used to be instructor-led courses. Those don't happen so much now. You've got the practice test to be able to practice. You've got the sandbox to be able to look at the platform. And then you've got a bunch of other resources letting you know how long that particular exam is going to take, any policies, any accommodations that you might need, the cost. And then you can go in and look at the others. And considering a replay, if you've never seen that, that's about, like, if you're not sure about an exam, you can, of course, purchase the exam, like a one-off purchase cost, each attempt. But there's also sometimes an option where it's like purchase the exam plus a replay or a retake, which basically means you're paying for 2 exam like options. So if you do the exam and you pass, well, you've just paid a bit more money for it. If you do the exam and you fail, you've got the option to retake the exam without having to pay another fee. And sometimes that can work out cost optimal because it's slightly less than paying for the exam twice. So I would do that.
True. Okay. Excellent. Now, this has been a good amount of information. We got some links available, and then follow-up links for people watching later on will be down in the description below. But yeah, hopefully this gives people a few chances to reduce the scariness of an exam, maybe encourage them to take it, find some discounts if available, because there are plenty of spots to do that. But a lot of good information shared today.
Yeah, and definitely like reach out to us on socials if you got questions or you're just not sure. I've sat enough exams that I'm happy to just jump on a Teams call or talk to every email or anything to say like, here's my thoughts or here's what I suggest you go look at if you're looking to learn more. I know for DP 700, there's a lot of conversations around, does anyone have any practice tests out there? You'll also find people are giving you guidance now to use prompting and use Copilot to create questions for you and basically be your study buddy. So have a look at those scenarios as well. I'm not saying they're good, bad, or otherwise, but it's just an option in the absence of having like practice tests to go through, like try and use the Copilot prompting to give you that behavior of give me a question, let me try and answer it, give me the explanation of whether I got it right or wrong.
All right, pop us back to here. But no, this has been fantastic, and I appreciate you sharing it. It's the first time we've had something focusing on exams, but it's a good conversation to have with sharing with resources as well. So thanks for hanging out again today for that.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. Any final things before we officially sign off?
Let's do all things data, all things Microsoft. And just breathe. There are times where you will get frustrated, but don't worry. We'll get through it. And there's this massive community to help you.
keep a cool head and persevere.
Exactly. Patience and persistence, people. Patience and persistence.
Excellent. Well, with that, then I'll have us sign off. But thank you so much for coming on and hanging out. And I'm looking forward to getting you back on it again and on another topic some point in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.